Kia ora,
for
talo
international
palava.
A
cooperation.
very important word.
Almost every language
the Israel
other than
Institute of New
English
Zealand.
and
My
French.
roots come from Jerusalem.
Hi, I'm Ashley Church from the Israel Institute of New Zealand. I'm here again today with Dr. David Cumin, a fellow director of the Institute, and this is the Israel Report. And David, probably the most important topic to discuss today is the recent indiscriminate firing of missiles in Israel again. I think this is the third or fourth time this has happened in the last 12 months. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yeah, well, in a 48-hour period, more than 700 rockets were fired from Gaza by Hamas and Palestinian Islamic Jihad indiscriminately into civilian areas in Israel. Unfortunately, there were 4 Israelis who died. 123 were injured. And one of the rockets fell short. It didn't make it over the border and killed a mother and her child within Gaza. So this is a tragedy for everyone.
Now, more people would have died, as I understand it, except that there are some precautions taken by the Israeli government.
Yeah, there's the Iron Dome, which is a remarkable piece of technology that intercepts rockets in the air and prevents them from destroying houses and exploding in populated areas. There's also warning systems and sirens, and there's people who are living in places like Sderot, which is right on the border with Gaza, that have literally 5 seconds from when a warning siren sounds to get into their safe room and into their bunker to be safe. And that's why there hasn't been more loss of life, thank goodness.
Yeah.
But this is an unprecedented number of rockets that have been fired.
So tell us, what are the reasons that Hamas is engaging in this exercise?
Well, this time they said that their excuse was to try and disrupt the Eurovision contest. So Israel won Eurovision, which is a massive pop contest in Europe. And
which is in Israel this year?
Well, because they won, they have the right to host it. And so it's going to be in Israel this year. And one of the excuses of these terror groups was to disrupt that song contest.
So you're telling me that 700 missiles are being fired into Israel because Israel is hosting a song contest?
Well,
You've got to be kidding.
That's their excuse. There's been several times over the past year that you said that there have been other large barrages of rockets and mortars. There's been more than 2,000 attacks on Israel from Gaza, from these terrorist groups. And this time they say it's Eurovision, but over the extended time they've made the excuse of the blockade, and they're blaming Israel.
Tell us about the blockade.
Well, they're blaming Israel for the poverty and the despair of their people, when in fact the Gazan people, when they're polled, blame Hamas and the PLO, actually. So the Gazan people know who's really controlling and who's really putting them in the position that they're in. The blockade is in force. There are still 1,000 odd trucks every week that go in and out from Israel, but they have to be checked because Israel can't allow more materials that can be used to make more rockets or to cause more terror.
So is it fair to say, just from what you've described to me, that these are attacks looking for an excuse? I
think so. The Hamas Charter explicitly says that Israel will continue to exist until Islam obliterates it. So this is a genocidal war that a terror group is waging, and including to attack a song contest. Well, I'm sorry, but the reason I'm focusing on that is because that's just ridiculous. They'll use any excuse, really, to kill Jews, and it's a miracle that Israel has the technology and has the systems to defend its population, and it's a travesty that these terror groups shoot from civilian areas using human shields of their own people to attack civilians on the other side. And there was some suggestion that some of the missiles were actually falling short and killing civilians within Hamas's own area. Right. So there was one report of a woman and a child who died, and the media and some of the commentators were quick to blame Israel, but Palestinian Islamic Jihad, in their own words, came out and said actually it was one of their rockets that fell short, didn't make it over the border. It's a travesty for everyone. And what's pleasing has been that most of the international community recognises this, condemns the terror. Except New Zealand. So, and for me, one of the shameful aspects of not just this, but the previous attacks in the last 12 months, and in fact going right back to 2006, governments of both flavours in this country have whether deliberately or inadvertently, not made any condemnation of these actions that Hamas has carried out in respect of these attacks on Israel. It's shameful as a Kiwi to exactly say that our government has not condemned terror against Israel for the last 13 years. The last minister to do so was Helen Clark as Prime Minister in 2006, and she said that the message that needs to be sent to Hamas and Hezbollah, that violence is not the way. And the message that our government is sending since then, in their silence about attacks, is actually that terror is okay when it's against Israel.
So is there anything significant about that silence since 2006? Is it tied up with trade? Is there some reason why why there has been this silence over that very long period of time?
I'm not sure. I wish I knew. All I can say is that it's shameful as a Kiwi that our government hasn't stepped up especially when most of the rest of the Western world has recognised terror for what it is and been strong enough to stand up against it. It's pleasing though. Simon O'Connor has recently in Parliament said that as chair of the Foreign Affairs, Defence and Trade Committee that they've discussed this and he thinks it's a little bit mixed up that the government doesn't stand against terror and is quick to condemn Israel.
No, I think that's important. Who he is actually important. So he's a national MP but he's chair of that committee, so he's not just an MP who's making this statement. He's actually in a position where he has some authority in these matters, and he's saying, as you say, to coin the term that he used, it's a little bit mixed up that this has actually happened.
Well, it's more than a little bit mixed up.
It is more than a little bit
But in
mixed
political terms, he's making a very strong point. He's saying New Zealand hasn't condemned terror. We've been quick to condemn Israel. This isn't fair. This is imbalanced. This is disproportionate. Now, you mentioned before that 4 Israelis had been killed as a result of this latest series of attacks. I think one of the things that's significant about that is just in the last little while there has been an event within the Israeli community, which is kind of the Israeli equivalent of Anzac Day and our commemoration of the campaign against Gallipoli back in the First World War. So tell us a little bit about that Israeli equivalent. Yeah, Yom HaZikaron is what it's called, the Day of Remembrance or Remembrance Day. It's exactly
is it a particular day of the week? Sorry, a particular time of the year?
It's just before Israeli Independence Day.
Okay.
So that's what we've just celebrated, 71 years of Israeli independence, the re-establishment of the Jewish homeland.
Yep.
And just before that is Yom HaZikaron, really paying tribute to the 23,000 odd service people who have lost their lives fighting for the State of Israel.
Going back how far?
Right back to 48.
Great.
And the thousands of Israelis and Jews around the world who have been victims of terror against Israel and against Jews. And so Yom HaZikaron is really a day of remembrance for the people who have lost their lives for the establishment of the State of Israel, and it comes just before we celebrate the State of Israel and its independence.
Nice segue into that.
It's important to remember and it's important to celebrate, and I think that encapsulates Israeli life. The other interesting thing is that it always comes about a week after Yom HaShoah, so remembering the 6 million Jews who were killed in the Holocaust. And so there is very much that idea of remembering, saying never again, and then celebrating life and celebrating independence and all that Israel has achieved in 71 years.
And that event, I guess, is celebrated right throughout the world. The independence is celebrated right throughout the world, but the commemoration also is an activity which is carried out by the Jewish community in all parts of the globe.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Jews around the world come together to remember and to celebrate, as in Israel. And actually it's very special in Israel. On Yom HaZikaron and on Yom HaShoah, there's a siren that sounded for 2 minutes. And what happens is in the streets, the cars stop.
Right.
Everyone gets out. It's almost as if the whole country stops to remember, and it's a beautiful thing. It's very special.
Wow. The other thing I want to talk about is that now that we're into a few episodes of the Israel Report, there's a few really positive things that have happened as a result of this. Firstly, we're getting some fantastic feedback from viewers on the report itself, and obviously we encourage that. We want more of that. We want people to write in with their views. We want them to tell us what they think. But there's some other ways in which they can support the Israel Institute.
Yeah, well, if people want to write in and give us more feedback and constructive criticism or praise, just go to israelinstitute.nz and there's a contact us form to write in. Our website, that same website, has articles and updates and a news feed. We're on social media as well, Facebook and Twitter, and there's a news feed that continues there in all of our articles as well. And we have a fortnightly newsletter. So if anyone wants to get in contact with us, check out our new articles, a news feed, or any of the videos that we've been doing, israelinstitute.nz.
Fantastic. Thank you, David.
Thank you, Ashley. The Hague Initiative for International Cooperation.
A very important
Almost every language from the Israel Institute of New Zealand.
My roots come from Jerusalem.